So, last year Galactic Armory came out with some files for Darth Vader's helmet, but they also included a set for the damaged helmet. Now you might think that this comes from the Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus show, but I prefer to think of it stemming from what the show ripped off. And that would be Rebels Season 2 and Ahsoka taking it to Darth. I mean, she destroyed Vader's helmet first.
Ahsoka.
But anyhow, I'm making this helmet, complete with a display base and a bit of a twist for the display inside the helmet with some making and finishing tips along the way. Let's make some cool stuff. So as I indicated before, these files are from Galactic Armory and they are pretty awesome.
Battle-Damaged Darth Vader, let's frickin' go.
Most of these files I'm able to print on my Bamboo Lab P1P, which is 256 millimeters cubed, and it's just a workhorse. This printer it's just amazing. But for the big dome, I wanted to print it in one shot, so I used my Elegoo Ep2 Max. And while that was printing away, I kept going on the P1P, and this thing prints so clean.
So clean.
Impressive. Most impressive.
Still going on the big printer and just hoping those are going to connect together, that support plus the rest of the dome. Meanwhile, on the P1P, I mean, it's not perfect all the time. The only problem I've ever had is stuff sticking to the plate, but that's what glue's for. Reprint, and there. Good to go.
Reconnected. Nicely done. Looking clean.
That's a lens guide for the eye. We'll use that later. And back to the big printer. We're almost there.
That better be good in the morning. 26 hours in, 5 to go.
But yeah, tragedy struck.
God dang it, he came loose. Ugh. That's disappointing. Came loose from the bed and... Damn.
You have failed me for the last time.
Maybe we can figure out where it failed and... Ah, dang it.
And to fix it, we bring our dome into Bamboo Studio and perform a cut. It's that option at the top, and that'll bring up this little guide where you can select that box and slide up. I'd already measured the dome so that the cut will be in the right spot, and before clicking perform, I unchecked object B, which is the pink one there, because we don't need the bottom of the dome. Click perform, and then we are left with our top piece that will hopefully fit perfectly. Now to just print and try it out.
Try this again.
And I said again there because the first time actually didn't work.
That is, I don't know. I gotta clean this up and see, but that might do it. We might be good, especially with Bondo. So, we're still too big. I line it up perfectly in the back. Perfect. Then we're sticking out. So, I'm gonna print one more time. See if third time's the charm. That did it. Freaking nailed it. Nothing a little epoxy and Bondo won't fix. Let's fix you, Darth.
Out to the shop, and I mix up a little 5-minute epoxy, definitely wear a mask, and glue him in place. It was tough to clamp together, but I made it work. Then a little bit of Bondo, cover all those seams, and I actually went ahead and just covered the entire top to conceal some of those layer lines. Do some sanding, and hey, we got over our fear that we couldn't fix this dome.
You have controlled your fear. Now, release your anger.
I'm not really angry, Darth, but let's move on to some spot putty to help conceal all those layer lines.
Obi-Wan has taught you well.
Obi-Wan didn't teach me this. I learned most of this from YouTube. Once the spot putty was all done, it was time to show off the shop's newest secret weapon, the Surf Prep Sander. This sander and these foam abrasive pads are a complete game changer when it comes to sanding helmets and props like this. Super fast, and as Darth would say,
All too easy.
Exactly, Darth. I did some more sanding over the rough spots of the helmet, and then back to the spot putty. Covered up those layer lines, and then it was back to the Surf Prep Sander. So much faster than hand sanding, and then once that was done, I was finally ready to glue up some parts. I glued on the front little grill, and then glued the top dome to the base of the mask. And hey, let's do a little test fit.
He looks so good. Except for this little spot right here. And that kid's. That's why we wear gloves. Otherwise, I might be stuck to old Darth.
With glue and Bondo out of the way, it's on to filler primer, and I make sure to give all my parts a couple very liberal coats of this stuff. And then once that's done, you guessed it, back to the Surf Prep sander. Again, all this stuff I used to do by hand, but here you can really get a good shot of how these foam pads just kind of wrap around all these rounded edges and just make this really fast and really easy. If you want one of these for yourself, follow the link in the description and use code DADCRAFTED to save 10%. We got all those parts cleaned up, and then it was time for paint, of course, gloss black because it's a Darth Vader helmet. A couple of coats of this, but before we can show off the awesome paint job, let's talk about what's going to go inside this helmet. So I bought this skull a couple years ago while I was at a haunt convention, but I don't want to use it, I want to replicate it. So I'm using this awesome new tool from Einstar.
Force is strong in this one.
It's not the Force, it's a 3D scanner. And I'm getting some help here from my buddy doing all the scanning work, and it's getting on the computer there so we can have ourselves our very own STL file of the skull. I bring that into Bamboo Studio, and then I'm going to perform a cut so I can print this easier. So we've got to rotate this guy just right so we can perform our cut line. You can see this skull already had a line where it was divided in half, and I want to make my cut exactly on that line again. So here you can see I click cut in Bamboo Studio, and it brings up this little option. I just move that doohickey up to be right on my line, do some final adjusting so that we're square and we're finally ready to perform our cut. But before we do the actual cut, we're going to add some connectors. So you see this add connectors option. We're going to go ahead and click that. And once you click that, it kind of shows where the cut will be and you're able to add your connectors. So there's some different options here where you can do a plug or a dowel, and you can change the shape of your plugs or dowels. I'm choosing dowels for this, and I'm choosing hexagon. You can also adjust the size of those dowels, so you can change the depth ratio for how deep they're going to go into the model, and then you can also adjust the size of the dowel itself. Once that's done, you just click right on the model where you want to put those dowels. So I'm just doing 3 here in kind of a triangle shape. I click confirm connectors, and then I do the perform cut. And just like that, we've got our 2 separate pieces and our 3 brand new dowels that are just laid across the build plate for us. You're able to then take those and kind of click on them and move them wherever you want. You can save them off as individual pieces, save one file with 3 plates, however you want to do this. And then I was able to start printing with the bottom part of the skull flipped upside down.
Now we're talking.
But before I print the dome, I'm going to do some slight adjustments in Bamboo Studio. If you've ever used one of these printers, you know that the top of any round object can really kind of show through with these layer lines pretty badly. So we're going to try to make a quick adjustment to fix that. So we go back to the top and click this variable height option. You turn the quality speed all the way down to 0 and click adaptive. That will give you the ability to basically slow things down when it gets to the top. There's this right rail where you can adjust things. There's much better videos on the internet on how this works and how to do this better, but that's what we're going with. So we get this guy all printed up, and then we're actually going to do a compare to a previous skull that I printed before to see how it turned out.
So not exactly the look, because this is 2 different filaments. This is PLA, this is PLA plus, but this is the one where I did the smoothing technique, and this is the one where I did not. So you can definitely see bad texture of the layers really showing through. And here, while it's still there a little bit, especially at the top, it is much better than that.
Alright, back to prop making. We glue this guy together with our Star Bond adhesive, and I use the accelerator so that it solidifies a lot faster. And then just like we did with old Darth before, we're going to use some Bondo all over the skull to cover up that seam. We sand all that down as much as we can, back to my love of that Surf Prep sander. And then we use the spot putty again all over it to make it nice and smooth. Once again, back to my new favorite tool, the Surf Prep. Did I mention there's a link in the description below and you can use my code DADCRAFTED to save 10%? You should do that. We get him primed, we sand him again, and then we go on to this heirloom white paint. And then what I like to do with my skulls to age them up nice and good is to use some good old wood stain. Is it toxic? Yes. Do I care? No, because it looks amazing. And just look at what we made from nothing.
I am what you made me.
Yep, Darth, that's what I said.
So we're going to finish them off with some warm satin spray-on polyurethane, and then it's on to the next thing, which will be the base. And for the base, we're going over to our friends at Droid Division, specifically the Pit Droid files. You can find these over on Etsy, and they are freaking amazing. This is an awesome droid to build. You can do this with the whole family. I love this. There's going to be a video that I've got coming out soon on how I made these. They're just great. But with these files, you also get a base for him to stand on. It's got a couple different covers that you can print for it, and you screw his feet right to it. But instead of that, we are going to attach Darth's head right to this thing. So we started printing all the files for this thing and got it all laid out. For the great top, I ended up going with the files that look like panels from the Death Star. Figured that would go with Darth pretty well. Once we got everything printed and laid out, then it was time for glue. You just use the little dowels that come with the files and some Star Bond and glue everything together. And for paint, I actually want to go with a rust effect. I thought it would look cool for Star Wars to have this thing looking all rusted out and gnarly. So I'm going to go with a trick that I learned from my boy Van Oaks Props. And this is how you do it. You start by spraying everything down with a red primer. This kind of gives it that rust color. And then you come in with some spray adhesive. This is just like spray on glue. It's kind of stringy and it really looks like crap at first, but you just got to trust the process. You cover the whole thing with this stuff, all your parts. And then it seemed like a bit much, so I tried to pick out some of the extra stringiness from between all those grooves in the panels. Then you come back over with your flat black. You don't want to cover the entire thing with the black. You just kind of want to give some light misting from a little bit of a distance, and then you do that over all your parts. If you want to see the full process for how to do this, I'll have Van Oaks' link to his video, link below, where he goes into much more detail on how to do all this. After that, you come back to your red primer, and again, not covering, you want to leave some of the black underneath, but just give some light misting from about 12 to 18 inches away to give it more of that rust look. And we are looking, oh man, look at that. That is looking good.
The circle is now complete.
That's right, the circular base is complete, but before attaching the skull and helmet, let's finish the details on the helmet. There's several little detailed pieces that we need to hit with the filler primer again, and then we will come in with this metallic finish. Doesn't take much of this stuff, just some light dustings, and then everything looks like chrome. Once those are dry, it's back to the workbench for some glue up, and Galactic Armory did an awesome job with these files. As you can see, everything is numbered. Each piece has a number, and inside the helmet has the corresponding number. And most of these you don't even need glue, they just snap right in place. I did find that the last one actually did need a little bit of glue, so super glue to the rescue. And then we just had to glue in Darth's little tusks, so a little dab of glue in each spot, put those in place, and we're set. With that done, it was time to figure out how to attach this to the base.
All right, so I've got to figure out how to attach Darth's skull and helmet to this. So this is the full done case for the pit droid, or base for the pit droid. And those pieces are where you bolt up through the back, through the bottom. And I think what we're gonna do is just take a piece of scrap wood, drill holes, paint it black, and it will rest on top of here. Not be too thick to cover up light, but then we'll just bolt up and it will attach there, and then on that I'll drill through so that I can fit a dowel in there, and then that dowel will go up through the bottom of the skull. Let's try that.
And this is proof why every woodworker needs to save all their scraps. Found a good piece and just got everything lined up where I thought I needed it. Cut off a chunk, brought that chunk back to the table, and then used my drill press to make sure I could get a hole that was perfectly straight right through the middle. Once that was done, it was back to the base to do some measuring to figure out where our bolts needed to go and how thick they needed to be. I drilled those holes, checked out my alignment, and then we were on to drilling a hole into the base of our skull. A little grotesque, but we found the right Forstner bit and got her to fit just right.
Yes. All right, test fit before I paint the base, and I didn't consider that the helmet would actually hit that, but it's barely. I want him to be another row back because we're not really even, but I think if I just bandsaw off a little corner, that'll work. All right, I forgot to film, but there you go. Snipped off a little bit on the bandsaw. Retest.
Things still weren't fitting properly, so we cut off a little bit more on each end of our piece, and then it was time for our test fit.
So I think that's where we want him.
With that figured out, was a little bit of black primer and a little bit of flat black spray paint, and that stand piece was done. Then we could move on to lights. These cheapo lights I got off Amazon had a white cord, and I didn't like that, so I used some black primer to spray paint the whole thing black. From there, it was figuring out how to get it through the base. So I tried to drill a hole through the thing, see if I could get the cord to fit through the back. I ran into all kinds of problems with this. It wouldn't fit. I used a bigger drill bit. Finally got it to fit, and then eventually realized that this wouldn't work anyway with the lights I had. By the way, this stuff, primer doesn't work. It just gets all over your hands. But I had a mission to board all that and ended up going to the bandsaw and just cutting a chunk out of the back so that the light cord could just rest through there and the grate would sit on top of it. It's kind of crude, but you know, you do what you got to do.
It's crude, but it'll work.
Then it was just a matter of putting in the cheapo lights by peeling off the adhesive back and just wrapping it around in a circle all the way the inside of the base. Back to the basement shop, and we use our furniture bolts to attach the skull mount to the base. And then we set our Darth Vader helmet right over top. I mean, he does look pretty amazing, right? But let's check him out when he's all lit up.
Oh my god. That is sick.
And you might be wondering, what are you going to do with this thing? Well, luckily my brother runs a haunted house, and we have kind of a Star Wars section we call Smuggler's Alley, and Darth here fit right in. You know, the skull and everything ties nice into the Halloween theme. But after Halloween was over, I brought him back to my shop and decided to finish him up. I ended up cutting this eyepiece out of a welding helmet visor. I got old Darth taken down, and then I peeled the plastic away and used a heat gun, because there needs to be a little bit of a bend to this for it to properly fit inside the helmet. So I just get it hot, do my little slight bend, and then I just put a few dabs of hot glue in there to hold it in place. Have to hold it in for a little bit while the glue cures, and then we're good to go.
Your skills are complete.
Well, Darth, I'd like to think that we're always learning. But if you guys would like to see me make another Star Wars project, go ahead and let me know in the comments. In the meantime, you can click this other Star Wars project that we've got queued up for you. Thanks, everybody. Bye!